Every game needs something to teach the player how to play and to guide them towards their goals. As with everything, there are good and bad ways of doing this. You can have a character in the game gently telling the player what to do and make a tutorial feel like it's not even really a tutorial, or you can just throw up text on the screen that tells the player exactly what buttons to press to do certain things. A good middle ground example of a tutorial that's totally serviceable but nothing special is in Repo. This also now marks the 5th video since that game came out that I'm talking about it. I don't know if you guys are getting sick of that, but anyways, the tutorial in Repo is pretty much like the world's most decent tutorial. It tells the player everything they need to know in terms of basic controls, but leaves out some stuff for you to figure out on your own. It makes sense within the setting of the game, it's quick and concise, but it's missing really anything that makes it special or interesting. So Repo's tutorial gets a solid 7 out of 10. Good job, team. This is kind of funny. I was going to have a section here about the game praise tutorials and how, for the most part, it's just generic, put up text on the screen and contextual button prompts. But there's one part early on where the player goes into like a testing chamber and they have to do these tasks. And I was going to talk about how that section is actually really cool because it subtly teaches you about the game's survival horror and immersive sim elements. But then I went and played that part and I realized it actually doesn't do that at all. All that happens is you throw some boxes, hide behind a chair, and jump over a ledge. I can see how they might have been kind of trying to teach you about those elements, but it doesn't work very well. By this point, the player probably already knows how to pick up and throw things. Hiding behind a chair in an open room doesn't really translate into a message of you can hide from enemies, and you can jump over ledges is true, but also not very helpful. There are other narrative reasons that the test is weird and simple like this, but they could have kept those reasons intact while having this be an actually good, immersive tutorial of the game's unique elements. So there's a missed opportunity. It's hard to think of any games that do what I described here, because it does take a lot of effort to do that in a way that feels organic. Let me know in the comments if you know of any games that take a more subtle approach to a tutorial. I played Silent Hill 2 recently, and by recently I mean that's the reason this video is so late, because I spent all of last week playing that game instead of working on this. I played the original, not the remake, because as I mentioned in my last video, I can't afford to buy new games. Obviously the original costs like $300 normally, but we do a little ethical piracy here from time to time. Anyways, this is going to show my inner zoomer for a second, but I was kind of surprised by the complete lack of an in-game tutorial until I was reminded that this game was made way back in ancient times when games used to have manuals that you could read during the drive home from the game store. The tutorial's in there, you just read it like it's a board game. I guess there's no real way to make a tutorial more immersive than just removing it from the game entirely. The older Metal Gear Solid games take a similar approach, with the controls being in the game's manual, but there are also times that characters will just flat out tell you what buttons to press as if they know you're playing a video game, which I've always found to be pretty neat. This video so far has been all about tutorials, but introductory tutorials are only a small part of how games teach you things. Yes, it's nice if they're subtle and unobtrusive, and yes, they're important, but what needs to be even more subtle and what's even more important is this sort of abstract guiding force that should exist throughout a game. This is something that mostly comes down to specific level design decisions, and how it gets done is really dependent on the game's mechanics and environment. It needs to be handled with subtlety so that the player doesn't feel like their immersion is broken, but it also can't be so subtle that players don't notice and end up getting lost. Immersion is a tricky thing to talk about usually, but fortunately, a great evil has ascended from the depths of hell as a perfect example of how to not go about this subtle guiding force. And that evil is the color yellow. For those who don't know, a number of games over the past few years have been using yellow paint or tape or whatever to signify to the player an object that they can interact with or the path they're intended to take. In my honest opinion, this is not nearly as big of a deal as the internet has made it out to be, but it is relevant to this video, and it is definitely not great design, so I'm going to talk about it. First of all, why do we even need a guiding force in video games? Can't developers just trust that the players are good at games and they'll know where to go and what to do? Well, no. Because if they don't have some kind of indication of what objects the player can interact with and what path they're supposed to take, a large portion of players will miss things. They'll get lost, or they might not notice some items or interactables. You might think that you would just be better and not miss those things, but again, the whole point of this is that it's subtle enough that you shouldn't even realize it's happening. To the player, it should feel like they just noticed it on their own without any help. I've been talking about this really abstractly so far, so to bring up a specific example, I'll go back to Silent Hill 2 and we can look at the models and textures for the items in-game. For pretty much all of them, they stand out against the background, and James even looks at items he can pick up if he stands near them. Obviously this doesn't sound super subtle, it's more subtle than the yellow stuff, but most games that you play have some way of making interactable items stand out against the environment. And they should, because the developer can't expect the player to go around trying to pick up everything they see, or inspect every inch of every wall. Like I said, that example isn't the most subtle, but the more subtle they get, the more abstract they get. Another example is in Peak, how the terrain's texture is dependent on the sort of flatness of it, and the player can use that to tell where they can stand. This is something the player is gonna notice, even though the game doesn't directly state it. But at the same time, they'll probably only consciously think about it the first time they notice it, and after that it just becomes second nature. The majority of the guiding force happens in hyper-specific level design decisions. Things like where your lights are shining, where your mysterious blood splatters are placed, where enemies are placed, where sounds are coming from, where there's large clumps of debris, and like a million other things. This is exactly what the yellow paint does wrong. It ignores all of those subtle level design decisions in favor of, well, just painting the ladder yellow. As I said before, the guiding force is extremely dependent on the game itself. In any game that you play, if the guiding force is well designed, it'll help you learn about what makes the game unique, and what your options are during gameplay. But it'll do so in a way that feels like you're figuring it out yourself, rather than the game telling you. So, that's all for this one. Like and sub if you enjoyed, and stay tuned for the next one.